Singaporeans, the moment you've been waiting for, the candidate for Tanjong Pagar GRC, Mr. Tan Ji Say.
Good evening, fellow Singaporeans and residents of Jurong and Tanjong Pagar GRC. Thank you very much for coming to our first rally. Our party is only 1 year old, and we are putting up 10 candidates forward. Not a bad start. And we are attracting attention. PAP has started to attack us by name. Before this, they just pretended that we did not exist. They attacked us last night in Tanjong Pagar GRC, where we are also contesting. Since this is Jurong GRC, I should begin with our PAP opponents in Jurong. But Taman has not attacked us yet. He is a nice guy. But will he remain nice after tonight? Taman is a good man, but he joined the wrong party. I will say more about Taman later. But now let me respond to the attacks by our opponents in Tanjong Pagar. Mr. Chan Chun Sing, the Prime Minister in waiting, accused SingFirst of bribing children and the elderly with monthly allowances of $300. He said, "Please don't insult my residents. You think they are here to be bribed?" Close quotation marks. What does Mr. Chan find insulting? Is $300 per month too small an amount, or is the promise of financial help insulting? The PAP promised pioneer citizens $300 per quarter every 3 months, but our $300 allowance is for every month, making it $900 per quarter, 3 times more than PAP's. But this amount, even this amount, will not satisfy Mr. Chan. Didn't he talk with delight about XO Chai Tao Kueh that costs $20 a plate? So $300 will buy him only 15 plates a month. Not enough, leh? This is so typical of the man and his PAP cronies who forget their humble beginnings after rising up their career and then find it demeaning to eat plain chai tao kueh that costs $2 a plate. We in SingFirst do not forget our humble family beginnings. I am the son of a washerwoman, and my first option is to eat non-fancy food at a hawker center because I know how hard it is to earn even a single dollar. Let me next turn to Mr. Chan's second source of insult. He thinks bribing voters is insulting. But hasn't his party been bribing voters all over Singapore? In the name of celebrating SG50 and so-called rewarding pioneers. Isn't this insulting Singaporeans? And it is big-time money from taxpayers. To make it complete, why not call this election an SG50 election? Too blatant, too shameful. Let me be very clear about this. We are not bribing the elderly with $300 a month. We are returning to them the money that rightfully belongs to them. Let me explain. Every month, our workers put a sizable portion of their salaries into the CPF. These CPF savings are paid an interest rate of 2.5% on average. They are used to buy special government securities, which are then invested by GIC. GIC earns a return of about 6% on these investments over a 10-year period. But CPF members get paid only 2.5%. So the government keeps the excess of about 3.5%. By way of contrast, Malaysia's EPF, Employees Provident Fund, the same as our CPF, paid a dividend of 6.75% to its member last year. More than 2.5 times our CPF. Members' balances amounted to $250 billion at the beginning of 2014. And if all these balances were invested by GIC, the 3.5% excess return kept by the government would mean a sum of about $8.75 billion. Our $300 monthly allowance to elderly Singaporeans costs only $2 billion, $2.16 billion. Less than 1/4 of the $8.75 billion that the government has shortchanged us. Is it any wonder that more than half of Singaporeans do not have adequate savings to meet the CPF minimum sum requirement for retirement needs? Our $300 monthly allowance will help the elderly retire comfortably with money that is rightfully theirs. So all this talk of bribing is nonsense. We don't bribe people. We return their money, the money that belongs to them. Mr. Chan also spoke about trust. He asked residents to vote for the party that they can trust. Of course, he meant that only PAP is worthy of PAP's trust. Really? Let's see what an independent international survey tells us. The Adamant Trust Barometer reveals that in 2014, only 26% of Singaporeans trust their government leaders to tell the truth. In other words, the overwhelming majority of Singaporeans do not trust PAP government leaders. This is a result of a survey by an international firm, Adamant, very reputable, and secretly 74% of you guys, you Singaporeans, tell them that you don't trust PAP government leaders. Do you still want to vote for a party whose leaders have such a low level of trust among its citizens? I want now to answer Indrani Raja, who disputed our view that the government favors foreigners over Singaporeans. She claimed that Singaporeans are front and center of everything that PAP does. I will cite just 3 examples to show she is wrong. 2 in education and the other in business. In primary one school registration, Singapore citizens are not in front, but share the same priority as PRs. You go and look at MOE website. It's very clear. Singapore citizens or PRs, Phase 1A, Phase 1B, 2A, 2B, all the same, enjoyed equally by Singapore citizens and PR. Singapore citizens are not in front of them. Also, Singaporean students pay school fees and take up student loans to pay their university fees. But foreign students get scholarships and free tuition fees to the tune of $400 million every year. That's education. Our children are placed back, not front, of foreigners. In business, The Economist, a respected international news magazine, ranked Singapore as top 5 in the world on its global cronyism index. And what it means to be a cronyism is that politically connected businessmen are most likely to prosper. Singapore comes 5th after Hong Kong number 1, Russia number 2, Malaysia number 3, and Ukraine number 4. These are not examples of your decent capitalist country. The word cronyism came into popular usage in Indonesia in the immediate post-Suharto era as part of a public revulsion among Indonesians against corruption, cronyism, and nepotism. In Singapore, we do not have corruption. A reputable international magazine now says there is cronyism in Singapore. We do not have nepotism, but we are told that natural aristocracy is good. Cronyism and aristocracy mean that certain classes of people are favored over ordinary businessmen and citizens who cannot therefore be in the front and center of whatever a government does. They are the exact opposite of the principle of meritocracy, which allows ordinary people to move ahead on the basis of their capability and not on the basis of political connections or birth. So when PAP leaders next open their mouths with the word meritocracy, remind them of these two other words, cronyism and aristocracy. Aristocracy, you say something about nepotism, you can be sued, but they are now giving you a way out, you call it aristocracy. I will now talk a little about Mr. Tharman. As I said earlier, he was a good man until he joined the wrong party. In 2010, as chairman of the Economic Strategies Committee, he set a target of 3% growth in real income per year based on an annual productivity growth rate of 3%. But actual productivity has fallen way below Mr. Tharman's target. In the last 4 years, productivity grew an average of 0.3%, which is 1/10 of the target. We are halfway through the decade, and it is clear that the 3% target will not be reached. So Tharman got cold feet and lowered his own productivity target from 3% to 2% for the remaining part of the decade. This means that even if the target of 2% is attained in the next 5 years, the overall productivity growth for the entire decade would only be about 1%. It also means that real income growth will only be about 1% at best. Does this halfway change reflect well on a government that always tells us that it plans for the long term and is not constrained by short-term fluctuations? Is Taman a man of conviction or a man of convenience? The problem of low productivity growth is not new, but it has been made much worse by the liberal entry of foreign workers in the past 10 years under the current PM. From 2004 to 2014, the average annual GDP growth of 5.8% comprised a huge increase of 5.1% growth in the labor force, while productivity grew only 0.7% per year. PM and Taman now say we have to increase our productivity growth through skills training, education and innovation. But they have been singing this same tune for umpteen years without an iota of success to show for their seriousness or competence. Can we trust them to continue to do the job as incompetent managers of our economy? Taman was education minister for 5 years, from 2003 to 2008. Yet we were told that 60% of graduates from our institutions do not have the skills that employers want. As education minister, what had Taman been doing in the 5 years from 2003 to 2008? There is a serious mismatch somewhere which they cannot solve. They have taken 36 years since 1979. They can't solve it after 36 years. You want to give them another 5 years? There is a similar issue with innovation. Our people must be encouraged to venture forth with courage, spontaneity, and creativity. There must be freedom of expression so that people can try out different ideas, even if they are crazy ideas. The controls of the print, broadcast, and social media have to be liberalized. There might be abuses here and there, but we are mature enough to handle them in a civilized manner. The treatment of Amos Yee was unduly harsh and intimidating, even though he might have gone overboard with his views and utterances. He is only a 16-year-old teenager, and as parents with teenage children, we know how hard it is to be a teenager and to deal with them. We must give them a second chance when they stray. This reminds me of what President Obama said when he visited a U.S. federal prison recently. The prisoners were there for drug offenses. The president said that he had smoked marijuana when he was young, just like the prisoners that he visited. But the difference was that he was given a second chance, but the prisoners were not. He blossomed with this second chance, and the nation now has a president with a heart. Like the US president, we at SingFirst think with our hearts. So vote for a party with your heart and for a party with a heart. Let me now introduce you our candidates in Jurong and Tanjong Pagar GRC. Come forward. Come.
All together now, Jurong.
Vote SingFirst.